Elon Musk rubbed his tired eyes and glanced at the digital clock on his desk. It was 11:48 p.m. The SpaceX office was quiet, with the usual hum of machines and the distant buzz of the air conditioning the only sounds in the otherwise empty room. Everyone else had left hours ago, but Elon was still here. His mind raced through the intricacies of the Mars mission, the designs, the data. Every detail had to be perfect. This mission wasn't just another launch. It was the culmination of years of his work, of dreams that had kept him awake for so many nights. Tomorrow, his company, SpaceX, would attempt something never done before, a mission to send humans to Mars. If this rocket failed, everything he had worked for could be shattered. Just a few more calculations, Elon muttered to himself, taking another sip of cold coffee. The plans for the Mars mission lay sprawled across his desk. This rocket was everything. It had to be perfect. The blue glow from his computer screen lit up his face in the otherwise dark room. He stared at the massive rocket on the launch pad outside the window, as if willing it to rise into the sky. Elon had worked his whole life for this moment. He had faced countless failures, endured years of setbacks, but he always pushed through. This Mars mission was the pinnacle of his ambitions, the dream of making humanity a multi-planetary species. And tomorrow, if everything went according to plan, it would become a reality. But today, it felt like that dream was on the brink of slipping through his fingers. His mind was consumed by calculations, by the design of the rocket, by the mission timeline. There was no room for distractions. His phone buzzed, breaking his focus. He almost didn't pick it up, probably another reporter asking for a comment about the launch tomorrow. But something made him glance at the screen. It was a call from his son, Alex. "Alex," Elon answered, sitting up straighter. His 15-year-old son rarely called him at this hour. "Dad, something's wrong." Alex's voice trembled on the other end of the line. Elon's stomach tightened. "What's going on, Alex?" "It's Mom," Alex said, his voice breaking. She's been in a car accident. We're at Memorial Hospital. The doctors said she might not make it through the night." Elon's heart stopped. Despite their divorce 3 years ago, Sarah was still the mother of his children. He still cared for her. 1,000 thoughts raced through his mind. His family, his children, they needed him now more than ever. "What happened?" he asked, already standing up and grabbing his jacket from the back of his chair. "A truck hit her car on the highway. She's in surgery now. They're trying to stop the bleeding, but..." Alex's voice cracked. "I'm here alone, Dad." Elon felt a sharp pang of panic in his chest. Alex, alone in a cold hospital waiting room, while his mother fought for her life. He couldn't imagine what his son was going through. "Where are Lily and Leo?" Elon asked, thinking of his 2 younger children. "They're at Grandma's," Alex said. "I didn't want them to see Mom like this." "I'm coming right now, Alex. Stay with her." "I'm on my way," Elon said, his voice steady but his heart hammering in his chest. Just as Elon was about to hang up, the door to his office burst open. His assistant, Marcus, stood in the doorway, his face pale, his tie loosened, and his eyes wide with panic. "Mr. Musk, we have an emergency," Marcus said, breathing heavily as though he had run up all 10 flights of stairs. Elon's mind raced. "What is it?" "The cooling system on the Mars rocket. It's failing." Marcus, from the launch pad, just called. "If we don't fix it before the pre-launch sequence starts at 6 a.m., the whole thing could explode on the launch pad." Elon froze. The words hit him like a freight train. A failed launch wasn't just a disaster for SpaceX. It could be the end of the Mars mission. And 3 astronauts were aboard. The thought of their lives hanging in the balance made his stomach churn. "How bad is it?" Elon asked, his voice tight. "We think it's the new cooling system we installed yesterday," Marcus replied. "It's overheating. If we don't fix it before the countdown begins, it could cause an explosion. If we lose the rocket tomorrow, we lose everything. Our funding, our reputation, the entire mission. The board is already calling. They're threatening to pull their funding if we fail." Elon's mind raced again. This was a nightmare. His company, his vision for the future of humanity, depended on this launch. And yet, across town, his children were in crisis, his ex-wife fighting for her life. "Hold on," Elon said, looking at his phone. Alex's voice came through again. "Dad, are you still there?" "I'm here, Alex. I'm here," Elon said, his voice soft but focused. He turned to Marcus. "What's the status on the cooling system?" Marcus handed him a tablet. Elon scanned the screen. Red lights flashed across the data, signaling a catastrophic failure in the cooling system. His mind went into overdrive as he absorbed the information. "We can fix this remotely," Elon said, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. "But someone needs to manually override the safety protocols at the launch site and reprogram the cooling sequence." Marcus hesitated. "But sir, the backup system is connected to the same circuit as the primary one. If the primary fails, the backup will fail too. We need your authorization to make the changes." Elon closed his eyes for a moment, trying to push the weight of everything off his shoulders. The thought of the rocket exploding was almost too much to bear, but the reality of his family's crisis was equally pressing. "Tell the team to hold off. I'll be there soon," Elon said. He hung up, his hand shaking slightly as he looked at Marcus. "I have to go. Tell them to keep working on the fix. I'll be there to oversee the override." Marcus looked at him, a sense of urgency in his eyes. "And what about Alex and the hospital?" Elon didn't answer immediately. His phone buzzed again, another call from Alex. This time, it was a text. "Dad, please hurry. Mom's condition is getting worse." The phone rang again, this time from the board of directors. Elon's hand hovered over the screen. Everything was falling apart. He could feel the tension in his chest, a battle between his heart and his mind. "Tell the doctor I'll call back in 5 minutes," Elon said, his voice filled with resolve. He turned to Marcus. "Get the helicopter ready." Elon stood frozen in his office, the weight of the two crises pressing down on him. On one side, his dream, decades of work, billions of dollars, and the future of humanity's exploration of Mars, was on the verge of falling apart. On the other side, his family was in crisis. His ex-wife, Sarah, was in surgery, fighting for her life, while his children were left in the hospital, in fear and uncertainty. And here he was, caught between two worlds, neither of which he could afford to lose. His mind raced through 1,000 possibilities, none of them good. He could leave now, go to the hospital, be with his family, but the rocket, the mission, would that fail without his guidance? The pressure was immense. He knew he could fix the cooling system. He knew he could fix the mission. But what cost? If he stayed, if he continued to work, would his children ever forgive him? Would Sarah survive this night? Elon's phone buzzed again. It was a text from Alex. "Dad, I need you here. Please don't let her die." His heart sank. The words were a gut punch, and for a moment, he felt the heavy hand of regret pressing down on him. Alex needed him, but so did the astronauts on the launch pad. So did the thousands of people who worked for SpaceX. So did the mission itself. The future of space travel was in his hands. He turned back to Marcus, who was still standing by the door, his face tense, waiting for a decision. "Tell the team to keep working," Elon said, his voice firm. "I'll be there to oversee the override. But I need you to get the helicopter ready. I'll go to the hospital first, then come straight to the launch site. We can't afford to waste any time." Marcus nodded, clearly relieved to have some direction. "Understood, Mr. Musk." Elon grabbed his jacket, but as he reached for the door, his phone buzzed once more. It was from the board of directors, a call he couldn't avoid. "Elon, we're getting reports that the cooling system is failing. We need a guarantee that you'll be there to fix it personally. The board is already breathing down our necks, and we're on the verge of losing everything." Elon paused. The words of his board echoed in his mind. He could hear the urgency in their tone, their desperation. They had no idea what was happening on his end. They didn't know what he was going through. All they cared about was the mission, the numbers, the success. They didn't care about his family. "Tell them I'm on my way," Elon said, finally pressing end on the call. "I need 5 more minutes." Turning away from Marcus, Elon stepped into the hall, pacing as he thought through his options. He could hear the ringing in his ears, the tension building inside his chest. What should he do? It seemed impossible. How could he choose between his life's work and his family? Elon had always put work first. For years, he had sacrificed personal moments, birthdays, anniversaries, family events, all in the name of the greater good. In his mind, he was building a better future for his children, for humanity. He had always told himself that he would make it right eventually, that someday he would find the balance. But for now, there was always something more pressing, always another crisis to solve. And yet here he was, standing in the very moment that would determine whether he could hold onto that vision of a better future, or whether it would all come crashing down. He walked back into his office and sat down at his desk, his hands shaking as he grabbed the tablet Marcus had handed him earlier. The cooling system data was still flashing red, a dire warning that needed his attention. But as he looked at the numbers, another message flashed across his screen. It was from Alex. "Dad, where are you? Please come." The words tore through him, and for a moment, Elon felt himself slipping. He thought about his children. He thought about their faces, Alex, Lily, and Leo, who had grown up without him really being there. He had missed so much of their lives. Every birthday, every school recital, every family gathering. He had always told them that he was building something bigger for them, for their future. But at what cost? His phone buzzed again. Another message. "The doctor wants to talk to you. Mom needs information about her medical history." Elon closed his eyes, pinching the bridge of his nose. The pressure of this moment, the weight of his responsibilities, was suffocating. He didn't know how to fix this. He didn't know how to be in two places at once. "Marcus," Elon said, his voice barely above a whisper. "I need to make a decision. Get the helicopter ready, but tell the launch team to hold off for now. I'll be there as soon as I can, but I have to go to the hospital first." Marcus looked at him, his face filled with concern, but he nodded. "Understood, sir." Elon grabbed his phone again and called Alex. "I'm on my way," he said, his voice shaking. "I'll be there as fast as I can. Just hang in there." The helicopter ride to the hospital was the longest of his life. Elon leaned back in his seat, staring out the window, his mind spinning with what he had just left behind at SpaceX. His heart was torn. He couldn't help but feel guilty for leaving. The mission, the dream of reaching Mars, was within his grasp. But his family was falling apart, and he had no idea what the future would hold. If he failed to save his ex-wife, if he failed to be there for his children, could any of it, his work, his legacy, ever mean anything? He had worked so hard for so long to achieve the impossible. But now, in this moment, it seemed that his greatest challenge wasn't reaching Mars. It was finding the balance between his dreams and his responsibilities as a father. The helicopter touched down at Memorial Hospital, and Elon rushed out, his footsteps echoing in the silent night. As he entered the hospital, he was met by the cool, sterile air of the emergency room. A nurse led him down a hallway, and as he turned the corner, he saw Alex sitting alone in a waiting room, his face drawn with worry. "Alex," Elon said, rushing to his son's side. "How's she doing?" "They're still working on her," Alex said quietly, looking up at his father. "I don't know, Dad. I am scared." Elon knelt down beside him, placing a hand on his son's shoulder. "She's strong, Alex. She's fighting. We have to believe she'll make it." Alex nodded, wiping his eyes. I don't know what to do, Dad." Elon pulled him into a hug, his heart heavy with guilt. He had always been so focused on the future, so consumed by his mission to change the world. But now, as he held his son, he realized that the world he had been working to create would mean nothing if he lost the people he loved most. "Listen," Elon said softly, pulling back and looking his son in the eye. "I'm here now. I'm going to be with you. We're going to get through this together, okay?" Alex nodded, but the worry in his eyes was unmistakable. Elon stood up, looking down the hallway toward the surgical rooms. He knew his time was running out. The decision about the Mars mission still loomed over him like a dark cloud. But for now, he had made his choice. He would be there for his family. The mission could wait. Elon stood at the door of the surgical waiting room, watching Alex, who was now joined by Lily and Leo, sitting with their grandmother. The sterile hospital air seemed to weigh on him more than ever. The noise of the bustling hospital around him seemed distant compared to the constant noise in his head. His mind flickered back to SpaceX, where the countdown for the Mars mission was ticking down with every second that passed. It was only a few minutes after he had called the launch team to hold off, but he felt the weight of every second. The longer he was away, the more chance there was of things falling apart. It wasn't just about the rocket. It was about the lives of the astronauts aboard, the thousands of employees relying on this mission, and all the money invested in what could be the most important breakthrough in the history of space travel. Elon knew the stakes, but at the same time, there was a part of him that wanted to believe that there was something more than just the mission, that his family was worth more than the future he was trying to create for humanity. As he turned and looked at his children, a new weight settled on his shoulders. It wasn't just about the Mars mission anymore. It was about the life he had built with them, the life he had missed out on. All the years he had spent working relentlessly toward a future that would never come unless he changed his approach. Was that sacrifice worth it? Was he willing to risk his relationship with them in order to make history? What would his children think of him when they were older? Would they resent him for always putting the work ahead of them? Mr. Musk, a voice interrupted his thoughts. Elon turned to see a doctor standing at the end of the hallway, a clipboard in hand. The man looked tired, but there was a calmness in his demeanor that Elon appreciated at this moment. "How is she?" Elon asked, walking toward the doctor. "She's stable for now," the doctor said. "We've managed to stop the bleeding, but she's lost a lot of blood. We'll need to keep her under observation, and she'll need a transfusion. But she's tough, Mr. Musk. We're cautiously optimistic." Elon felt a flood of relief wash over him. But as the weight of the news settled in, a new wave of anxiety hit him. He knew Sarah's medical history, but he had been so distant in the past years that there were things he wasn't sure about. Details that might be critical now. The doctor seemed to sense Elon's apprehension. "There are some questions about her blood type," the doctor said. "You're her next of kin, and we need some more information to proceed. Can you help us?" Elon's mind raced. This was not what he had expected when he woke up that morning. The launch, the calculations, the designs, it all seemed so trivial now compared to the possibility of losing Sarah. She had been an integral part of his life, even after their divorce. She was the mother of his children, and no matter what had happened between them, she was still family. And right now, she needed him. He had to be there for her, for the kids. "I'll call you back in a moment," Elon said, pulling out his phone. As he stepped away, he glanced at the screen. It was a text from Marcus at SpaceX. "We've identified the issue with the cooling system. The pressure in the secondary loop is still too high. We need you to approve the override code to proceed. The launch is in jeopardy, Elon. We can't delay any longer." Elon stared at the message for a long time, feeling the pull of his responsibilities. This wasn't just about his family anymore. This was the culmination of his life's work, the moment he had been building toward for so many years. He had to be at the launch site. He had to be there to fix the system, to ensure everything went smoothly. If he didn't, the mission and everything SpaceX had worked for could fail. But then he looked back at the waiting room, at his children, who were sitting quietly, their faces filled with worry and fear. His oldest son, Alex, caught his gaze and offered a small, weak smile. Elon's heart clenched. Alex was strong, but he wasn't immune to the stress and fear of this situation. The kids needed him. He couldn't let them go through this alone. Elon took a deep breath. This was his life. His children needed him now. Sarah needed him, but so did the mission. There was no simple way out of this. He had built SpaceX into the powerhouse it was, but it had come at a cost. The balance between work and family had always been a struggle, but now he was being forced to confront it head-on. He stood there for a moment, his heart torn. Then he made his decision. He called Marcus back. "Marcus, tell the team to hold. I'm not coming to the launch site right now. I need to be with my family. You have the solution for the cooling system. You know what needs to be done." There was a brief silence on the other end of the line. Then Marcus spoke, his voice tight. "Are you sure about this, Elon? We're on the edge of a disaster here. You're the only one who can fix it." "I trust my team," Elon said, his voice firm. "You've got this. You can do it without me. The team at SpaceX is capable. You don't need me hovering over your shoulder." Elon heard Marcus sigh. "All right, we'll take it from here. We've got the solution. Just keep us posted." "I will," Elon said, "but I need to be with my kids. You've got everything under control. I'll be in touch." He ended the call, his heart still pounding. As he walked back into the waiting room, his eyes settled on Alex, Lily, and Leo. They looked up at him, And for the first time in what felt like forever, Elon felt like he was in the right place. The right place for his family. "She's stable for now," Elon said softly, sitting down beside them. "They're doing everything they can." Alex leaned against him, his face weary but filled with relief. "Thanks, Dad. We really needed you here." Elon hugged him tight. "I'm here, Alex. I'm not going anywhere." For the first time in a long time, Elon felt the weight on his shoulders lighten just a little. He had made the right choice. His children needed him. Sarah needed him. And, for once, he wasn't going to let them down. The Mars mission could wait. But as he sat there with his children, his phone buzzed again. Another text from Marcus at SpaceX. "The cooling system fix is working. The launch is back on track. We've got this." Elon smiled, feeling a surge of pride. "We did it," he said, looking at Alex. "All of us. Even from here." Alex smiled back. "So, you really are a superhero, huh?" Elon chuckled, his heart swelling. "Not quite, but I'm trying to be." The hours passed slowly at the hospital. Elon found himself sitting with his children, his mind constantly wandering between the chaotic reality of his company and the quiet, desperate hope that Sarah would pull through. The clock ticked, the seconds stretching into minutes that felt like hours. Every time his phone buzzed, he tensed, expecting more updates from SpaceX. News of the cooling system, the launch, or worse, a failure. But as time went on, he realized that nothing had happened without him being there. It wasn't easy, but the team at SpaceX was holding their own. For once, the system he had built, the one he had poured so much of himself into, was running smoothly without his constant oversight. His children, however, were a different matter. They had always been the missing pieces of his life. There had been times, countless times, when he had promised himself that once the mission was successful, once the company was secure, he would be there for them. But the years had passed, and he was still trapped in the cycle of work, always putting off what mattered most. Now, sitting in that sterile hospital room, with his son Alex leaning against him and his younger children, Lily and Leo, playing quietly on the floor, he felt something shift. He didn't have to choose between his company and his family. The old Elon would have forced the choice, as he had done time and time again, putting the company first, always believing that his sacrifices were necessary for the future. But in that moment, surrounded by his children, he began to understand what he had been missing all these years. The dream of Mars, the future of humanity, was important, but so was the future of his family. Without them, none of it would matter. They were his reason for working so hard, but he had neglected them for so long. It was time to change that. "Can we go home soon?" Lily asked, her voice soft, but with a trace of weariness. She was always the quiet one, the one who kept her emotions to herself, but Elon could tell that she, too, was feeling the weight of everything that had happened. "We're going to be here for a little longer, sweetie," Elon said, his voice gentle, trying to provide some comfort. "But we're making sure your mom is okay. The doctors are doing everything they can." Lily nodded, but Elon could see the uncertainty in her eyes. She didn't understand all of what was happening. How could she? But the fear was there, and it was clear that the events of the past few hours had shaken her. Leo, the youngest, had been quieter than usual. Elon knew it was because he didn't fully understand the situation. But even at his age, he sensed the tension. He came up to his father, tugging at his sleeve. "Dad, is Mom going to be okay?" Leo asked, his small voice filled with worry. Elon crouched down to his son's level, placing his hands on his shoulders. "Your mom is strong, Leo. She's going to fight through this. The doctors are making sure she gets better, and we're all here for her. We're a family, and we'll get through this together, okay?" Leo nodded, but the uncertainty remained in his eyes. Elon hugged him tightly, the overwhelming guilt threatening to break through again. Was he doing enough? Had he been there enough? For the past years, he had told himself that he was building a future for them. But what good was that future if he wasn't present to share it with them? "Where's Grandma?" Elon asked, standing up and scanning the room. Lily pointed toward the hallway. She went to get some coffee. She said she'd be right back. Elon nodded and looked back at his children. "I'm gonna make a call," he said. "I'll be right back." He stepped outside the waiting room and into the quiet hospital corridor. His phone buzzed again. It was from Marcus at SpaceX. We've solved the issue with the cooling system. Everything's back on track. The launch will go ahead as planned. We've managed to stabilize everything, but we need you here for the final pre-launch checks. Elon's heart rate picked up. He had promised his team he would trust them, and they had delivered. He had made the right decision by staying at the hospital. But now, the moment of truth had arrived. The Mars mission was ready to proceed, and the launch window was drawing near. The question was, could he leave now and still make it back in time? Could he abandon his family again, even if it was for something as monumental as the mission to Mars? He walked a few paces down the hall, his mind in turmoil. Another text came through, this time from his daughter, Alex. "Dad, I'm glad you're here with us. But are you going back to SpaceX now? We can manage here. You should be there, shouldn't you?" Elon stopped walking, staring at the screen. His son's words hit him hard. Was he really going to leave them again? Was this the pattern he was doomed to repeat? Always putting work before family? The reality of the situation was undeniable. He had worked so hard to build this company. The Mars mission was the culmination of everything he had dreamed of for decades. And yet, every time he took a step toward achieving his dreams, it felt like something slipped away from him. His children, his relationships, they were always the things he would fix later. Elon took a deep breath. He couldn't keep telling himself that he would fix things later. The time was now. He had made his decision. He called Marcus back. "I'll be there in an hour. Get everything ready. But I'm not leaving here until I know Sarah is going to be okay. I'm putting everything on hold for now." Marcus's voice was tense. "Understood, sir. We'll keep everything ready for you." As Elon hung up, he felt a wave of relief wash over him. He wasn't abandoning his team, nor was he abandoning his family. He was going to show up for both. The mission could wait. His family came first. He walked back into the waiting room, where his children were still sitting. "I'm not leaving you guys," he said softly, sitting beside them. Alex looked up at him, his eyes full of concern. "Are you sure, Dad? We know you've been working so hard for this. We don't want you to miss it." Elon smiled, a genuine smile that had been hard to come by in recent years. "I'm here for you, Alex. I've made mistakes, but I'm trying to be better. I'll be there when the launch happens, but right now, I'm staying with you." The next few hours passed in a blur of hospital corridors, comforting his children and waiting for any news about Sarah. Elon had not left their side. Every now and then, a nurse or doctor would pop in with updates, but none of them were earth-shattering. Sarah's condition remained stable, though still serious. It was a tense waiting game, but as the hours dragged on, Elon found himself taking in the little moments he had once missed. The way Leo clung to him during the few moments they shared, how Lily had quietly taken out a drawing pad and started sketching the view from the hospital window. Even Alex, normally so serious, had cracked a small joke, easing the tension for a fleeting moment. He hadn't realized how much he had missed the simple joy of just being with his family. How long had it been since he had sat down with them without thinking about the next big project, the next launch, the next crisis? His phone buzzed again. It was a message from Marcus. "The cooling system is holding. The launch is still on schedule. We're just waiting for your final approval on the override codes." Elon looked at the text, but before he could respond, his phone buzzed again. This time it was from his SpaceX board, the chairman's name flashing on the screen. His fingers hovered over the screen, the weight of the decision bearing down on him. The old Elon would have answered without hesitation, rushing back to the launch site without a second thought. But the new Elon, the one who had just spent hours with his children, with Alex and Lily, and had promised them that he would be there for them, was different. He sighed and pressed the button to reject the call. The meeting could wait. The launch could wait. He had made the decision. For the first time in years, Elon Musk wasn't going to rush to save the day. He was going to be present for his children, and that was enough. A few moments later, another message came in from Alex. "Dad, are you still coming? I know the launch is important, but we really need you here with us." Elon stared at the message. The guilt he had been feeling for years flared up once more. But now, for the first time, he realized how deeply he had let his children down. Alex, who was old enough to understand the magnitude of his father's work, still wanted him there. Wanted him to be more than just the provider and visionary. He needed him as a father. All these years, Elon had justified his absences, convincing himself that he was doing it for them. But now he saw the truth. He had been too busy chasing a dream to notice that his children needed him more than anything. He picked up the phone and quickly texted back, "I'm not leaving. I'm here with you, and I'll be here until your mom is okay." The minutes seemed to stretch endlessly as the family waited. Elon sat quietly with his children, trying to soak in the moments he had almost missed. The quiet hum of the hospital, the muted sounds of the television playing in the background. It was all so normal, so human, in a way that his work world had never been. He realized now how out of balance his life had become, and how desperate he was to find his way back to something that felt right. But as the evening wore on, the calm was suddenly broken by a soft knock on the door. A nurse entered, her expression both professional and reassuring. "Mr. Musk," she said, "your ex-wife's condition has stabilized, and the doctors are confident she's out of immediate danger. She's still under observation, but it looks like she'll be okay." Elon felt a rush of relief flood through him. His breath caught in his chest, and for the first time that day, a genuine smile crept across his face. He stood up, his hands shaking slightly, and looked at his children. "She's going to be okay," he said, his voice thick with emotion. "Mom's going to make it." Alex stood and embraced him. "I'm so glad, Dad," he said quietly, his voice muffled against Elon's shoulder. "Thank you for being here." The flood of emotion, the guilt, the relief, it was all overwhelming. Elon stood there in silence for a moment, savoring the feeling of his son in his arms. This was what mattered. This was what he had been missing. As the doctor stepped into the room, Elon felt a momentary tension return. The doctor's face was still solemn, but there was a lightness in his voice. "Mr. Musk, Sarah is still in critical care, but her vitals are stable. She'll need a few days to recover fully, but we expect a full recovery." Elon nodded, not trusting himself to speak. He turned to look at his children, who were now hugging each other. He could see the relief in their eyes, too. It had been a long day, filled with so much uncertainty, but now, for the first time in what felt like forever, there was a sense of peace. "Thank you, Doctor," Elon said, his voice steady. The doctor gave a slight nod. "We'll keep monitoring her, but for now, you and your family can rest." As the doctor left, Elon turned back to his children. They were huddled together, quietly talking amongst themselves. Leo was asking about the next steps, and Lily was showing Alex a drawing she had made of their family together. Elon couldn't help but feel an overwhelming sense of gratitude. It was such a simple moment, but it was everything he had been missing. "Hey, kids," Elon said, his voice breaking the quiet conversation. "I know it's been a long day, but I think we all need some rest, don't you think?" Alex looked up at him, his face still a little pale from worry, but now filled with something else. Understanding. "Yeah, we could use some sleep, Dad." Elon smiled, brushing a hand through his son's hair. "Then let's get some rest. Tomorrow's a new day. We'll be here for Mom, and everything will be okay." The family settled into a more comfortable silence. For the first time in a long time, Elon felt the balance he had been seeking. He wasn't just a father in name. He was here, present, and that meant everything. The Mars mission, the rocket, the billions of dollars, all of that was important, but it was only a part of his life. And now, for the first time, Elon Musk was beginning to understand that it was okay to make space for both. He wasn't going to abandon the mission, but he wasn't going to lose his family in the process. For once, he wasn't going to put work first. He wasn't going to abandon them. The night passed quietly, and Elon stayed by his children's side, letting go of the constant pressure that had consumed him for years. He had made it clear to himself that his work could wait. His family couldn't. The morning was eerily quiet, save for the soft beeping of machines and the hushed conversations of medical staff just beyond the room. Elon sat in a chair beside his children, who were slowly starting to wake up. The exhaustion from the past few days had caught up with them, but there was a sense of peace now that Sarah was out of immediate danger. The hours at the hospital felt long, but in a way, they had given him something he hadn't realized he needed: perspective. As he watched his children, their faces still a bit strained but noticeably relieved, a wave of guilt washed over him. All those years, he had thrown himself into his work, telling himself it was for them, that he was building something better, something that would change the world for the better. But now, sitting there, he realized how far he had pushed him away in pursuit of that dream. For the first time, he understood that work wasn't everything. And yet, there was that voice inside him, reminding him of how much he had sacrificed to get to this point. Elon's mind was a whirlwind of conflicting emotions. On one hand, there was the undeniable pull of SpaceX, of the Mars mission that had been years in the making. He had dreamed of getting humanity to Mars for as long as he could remember, and now, with the launch window approaching, the pressure was mounting. The board at SpaceX was still waiting for him to return, and the clock was ticking. But then there was his family, his children, who had grown up without him truly present. They had felt his absence for years, even when he was physically there. His relationship with them had been strained, and though he had tried to make up for it with grand gestures and promises to be better, those promises were often broken. He had missed birthdays, milestones, and, most painfully, moments that would never come again. Elon stood up from a chair and walked over to the window, his mind racing. The view outside the hospital was peaceful, the early morning sunlight casting long shadows across the city. But in his head, he saw the countdown to the Mars mission ticking away. He had to be there. The mission had to succeed. SpaceX had invested too much. It was more than just a company to him. It was his legacy. But then he thought of his children, still seated on the couch in the waiting room, their eyes filled with hope and fear. His daughter, Lily, had asked him a question that had lingered in his mind. "Are you staying with us, Dad?" The question had been simple, but it carried the weight of years of neglect. He hadn't been present for them, not like he should have been. As the minutes passed, Elon's thoughts became clearer. He could no longer justify putting his company first. His family had always been an afterthought, but they were the ones who needed him the most. They were the ones who had always been there for him, even when he was too focused on his vision of the future. His phone buzzed in his pocket, pulling him out of his thoughts. He pulled it out and glanced at the screen. A text from Marcus at SpaceX. "The cooling system is holding. The launch is still on schedule. We're just waiting for your final approval on the override codes. We need you here, Elon." Elon closed his eyes for a moment, fighting the urge to rush back to the launch site. He had spent the better part of 2 decades pushing himself to the limit, convincing himself that it was all for his family. He had been so driven by the future that he had forgotten to live in the present. And now, for the first time, he realized something that had eluded him for years. He didn't have to sacrifice one for the other. He could find a way to balance both. He could still pursue the Mars mission, but it didn't have to come at the expense of his family. The team at SpaceX had proven they could handle things without him hovering over them. It was time to trust them, to let them do what they had been trained to do. His job was to lead them, but part of leadership was knowing when to step back and let others take the reins. As he walked back into the waiting room, he saw his children sitting together, their faces a mixture of hope and uncertainty. They had been waiting for him to make a decision, to show them that they mattered more than the rockets, the engines, and the ambitious goals he had spent his life chasing. He walked over to them, his heart heavy but resolute. He couldn't undo the past, but he could shape the future. "I spoke to the doctor," he said, sitting down beside them. "Your mom is going to be okay. She's out of immediate danger, and she's resting. It's going to take time, but she's strong." Lily let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding, and Alex looked at him with a mix of relief and concern. "You're staying, right, Dad?" Alex asked, his voice quiet but filled with the weight of years of waiting. Elon took a deep breath, feeling the truth settle in his chest. "I'm staying with you, for as long as it takes." Alex gave him a small, weary smile. "Thanks, Dad. We really needed you here." Elon nodded, his throat tightening with emotion. He knew they needed him, but he also needed them. The realization hit him harder than anything else had. He wasn't just building rockets to change the world. He was building a life with people who mattered more than anything else. And if he lost them in the process, then what was the point? For the first time in years, Elon felt a true sense of peace. He had made the decision to be present. He would find a way to continue his work with SpaceX and still be there for his children. It wouldn't be easy, but it was possible. As he sat there, surrounded by his children, he felt the weight of the past few days lift. They had been through so much together, and now, for once, they would face the future together too. "Let's get some rest," Elon said softly, his voice filled with quiet determination. "We've all had a long night, but tomorrow is a new day." Alex nodded, and Lily, who had been quiet for most of the conversation, gave a small smile. "Tomorrow is a new day," she echoed. The hospital room, once filled with tension and fear, now felt like a sanctuary. They were together as a family, and that was all that mattered. Elon stood up, stretching his stiff muscles, and walked over to the door. He took one last look at his children, who were settling into their seats, each of them exhausted but comforted by the knowledge that their father was there. He was really there. The world outside still felt like it was moving at a frantic pace, but for now, inside this small hospital room, he was exactly where he needed to be. The morning after Sarah's stable condition was confirmed was a turning point. Elon had managed to spend a peaceful night with his children, sitting with them as they chatted about school, their interests, and the things they would do when their mother was fully recovered. For once, he didn't feel the nagging pressure to run back to SpaceX. For the first time in years, his focus was on the here and now, not on the endless demands of his company. But as the morning progressed, the inevitable tug of his responsibilities at SpaceX began to rear its head again. His phone buzzed several times, messages from his assistant Javier and texts from the board, each one reminding him that time was running out. The Mars mission was still on schedule, but there were details that only Elon could oversee, critical systems that needed his personal attention. SpaceX couldn't afford to fail, not now. Elon had promised himself that he would trust his team, that he wouldn't be the bottleneck, that the company would continue to function without him hovering over every decision. But as he stared at the screen of his phone, he couldn't shake the feeling of being torn in two. The weight of his role as CEO was always present, and it was a pressure he had never quite been able to shake. But now, as his children sat in the room with him, their faces full of questions about their future, he knew that the decision wasn't as simple as just going back to work. "Are you going back to SpaceX today?" Alex asked, his voice quieter than usual. He hadn't said much since Elon had shared the news about Sarah's improvement. Elon knew his son, now a teenager, was grappling with the reality of his father's decision. Was this just another one of those promises that would eventually be broken, like so many others before it? Elon sighed and sat down beside him. "I don't know yet, Alex. The company needs me, but so do you." Alex didn't respond immediately, but Elon could feel the weight of the unspoken question. His son was old enough to understand that work was important, but he was also old enough to realize that there was a line that had been crossed too many times before. "You're not going to leave us again, right?" Alex asked after a beat, his voice filled with a quiet uncertainty that Elon hadn't heard in a long time. "I mean, I get it. I know SpaceX is your thing, and Mars is huge. But it's not the only thing, is it?" The question hit Elon harder than he expected. For years, he had justified his absences, telling himself that the future of humanity was worth the sacrifices. But looking at Alex now, seeing the doubt in his eyes, he realized how little he had actually been there for his children. How had it taken him this long to understand? "No, Alex," Elon said, his voice steadier now, "it's not the only thing. And I'm going to prove that to you." Alex gave a small nod, his expression softening. Elon smiled at him, feeling a deep sense of gratitude for this moment. It wasn't too late, not yet. He had made mistakes, yes, but he could make things right. He could still show his children that he was more than just the CEO of SpaceX. He was their father, and that was the role that mattered the most. Just as Elon was about to respond, his phone buzzed again. He checked the screen. It was from Marcus, the lead engineer at SpaceX. "Elon, we've hit a snag with the final pre-launch checks. The cooling system is holding, but we've encountered an unexpected issue with the backup systems. We need you here to authorize the final override codes. The team can't proceed without your approval." Elon's heart raced. The pressure was mounting again. The mission was on the line, and it was clear that his presence was required. But as he looked at his children, all three of them watching him intently. The weight of the decision hit him harder than ever. Could he really leave them again, even for something as monumental as the Mars mission? He felt torn between two worlds, one that required his presence at SpaceX and another that required his presence at home. For a moment, the fear of letting both down gripped him, but then something in him shifted. He wasn't the same person he had been just a few days ago. He had made the decision to be present for his family, and he would stand by that decision. "I'm going to stay here," he said, more to himself than anyone else. "The team at SpaceX has everything under control. I'm not going to let work come first this time." Alex looked at him, his face showing a mix of pride and something else. Relief, maybe. "You mean it, Dad?" Elon nodded, his voice firm. "I do." The decision was made. For the first time in a long while, Elon felt certain. He wasn't going to let the constant drive for success destroy what mattered most. He had spent so much of his life chasing a future that he had forgotten to live in the present. But now, with his family by his side, he was ready to live differently. He called Marcus back. "I'm not coming in today. The team can handle it without me. You have my trust, Marcus. Go ahead with the override. I'll be here with my family." There was a brief pause on the other end before Marcus's voice came through. "Understood, sir. We'll proceed as planned. We got this." Elon hung up the phone, feeling a weight lift off his shoulders. It wasn't about abandoning his responsibilities. It was about trusting the people around him to handle things while he focused on what mattered most. He turned back to his children. "How about we go grab some breakfast?" he suggested, trying to lighten the mood. "You guys need something to eat after everything that's happened." Lily smiled. "Pancakes?" she asked, her voice light and hopeful. "Pancakes it is," Elon said with a grin. It was a simple request, but to him, it felt like the beginning of something much bigger, a new chapter in his life, one where his family would come first. They all stood up, and for the first time in years, Elon Musk felt at peace with his decision. The road ahead would be difficult. There would still be sacrifices to be made. But for once, he wasn't sacrificing his family. He was choosing them. As they walked out of the hospital room, Elon took one last look at the city skyline through the window. The world was moving forward, and so was he. This time, with his family by his side. The day after making his decision to stay with his children, Elon felt lighter, more grounded than he had in years. The constant hum of SpaceX, the pressure of the Mars mission, and the demands of his role as CEO still loomed in the background, but they didn't dominate his every thought. For the first time in a long while, he was not obsessing over the future. Instead, he was living fully in the present, cherishing these moments with his children. Elon knew, however, that the road ahead wouldn't be easy. He had made a promise to his children, one he intended to keep. But it wasn't just about being there physically. He had to be present emotionally, too, something that had been a challenge for him for so long. SpaceX, Tesla, and all his other ventures had demanded so much of his time, and he had let that drive come at the cost of his family. Now, he was determined to find a way to be there for them without abandoning his vision for the future. He spent the day at the hospital, sitting by Sarah's side, talking to the children, and keeping them entertained. It felt good to be truly present, to not be distracted by work or the ever-present pressure of SpaceX's looming challenges. They ate pancakes in the hospital cafeteria, laughing and joking together as a family for the first time in years. By the time evening arrived, Sarah's condition had stabilized further, and she was moved to a regular room. Elon felt immense relief, but also a sense of gratitude. It wasn't just that Sarah was getting better. It was that for the first time, he was there when it counted most. He hadn't run off to a board meeting or a launch site. He hadn't put work ahead of his family. Instead, he had chosen to be there for them, and it felt right. But there was still that looming question. Could he maintain this balance? Could he continue to prioritize his family without sacrificing the work he was so passionate about? Elon knew that his commitment to SpaceX and his vision for the future of humanity couldn't simply disappear. He had worked too hard to get to this point. Mars wasn't just a dream, it was a calling. But as much as he believed in the mission, he now understood that his family was equally important. It wasn't about choosing one over the other. It was about finding a way to balance them both. That evening, Elon found himself sitting in a quiet corner of the hospital lounge, reflecting on the days that had passed. His phone buzzed with another message, this time from Marcus at SpaceX. Elon, the cooling system has been fully reconfigured. We're on track for launch tomorrow, but we still need you to make a few final calls. Can you come in tomorrow morning? The old Elon would have jumped at the opportunity to handle it immediately, to fix the last-minute details himself. But now, with everything that had happened, he wasn't sure he wanted to fall back into his old habits. He had made a promise to his children, and he wasn't ready to break it. He texted Marcus back, I trust you and the team. You got this. Go ahead and proceed. The launch can happen without me being there. I'm staying with my family. The relief he felt after sending that text was overwhelming. For years, Elon had been convinced that he was the only one who could solve every problem, the only one who could steer SpaceX through the rough patches. But now, he realized that part of leadership was trusting others to do their jobs, even when the stakes were high. His team had proven they could handle it, and he wasn't going to undermine them by insisting on micromanaging every detail. A few moments later, his phone rang again. This time, it was the chairman of SpaceX, Richard Norris. Elon hesitated, then picked up the call. Elon. Norris's voice came through, stern and impatient. The board is getting restless. We need you back in the office. You've been absent for too long. If you don't show up tomorrow, we may have to make some difficult decisions. Elon felt his pulse quicken, but he stayed calm. I'm not coming in tomorrow, Richard. The team can handle it without me. I've made my decision, and I'm going to stay with my family for now. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. You're making a huge mistake, Elon. We need you here. Your presence at the launch is crucial. This is history we're talking about. Elon closed his eyes for a moment, steeling himself. I understand the importance of the launch, Richard, but I also understand the importance of my family. I'm not going to be the CEO who loses everything at home for the sake of a successful mission. I've made my choice. Richard sighed. Fine, but don't expect this to be easy. The board isn't happy with your decision, and they'll want to talk to you soon. I'll handle it, Elon replied, his voice firm. But not right now. Right now, I'm with my family, and that's where I need to be. He hung up the phone and leaned back in his chair, closing his eyes for a moment. The weight of the decision still hung over him, but he felt a surprising sense of peace. For the first time, he had chosen his family over work. And in doing so, he had made a commitment to be a different kind of father, one who would be there for his children, not just in the big moments, but in the everyday moments too. As he made his way back to Sarah's room, he felt a renewed sense of purpose. His mission hadn't changed. Mars was still the goal, but he no longer saw it as the only goal. He wasn't going to let his professional ambitions overshadow his personal ones. His children deserved more from him, and he was going to be the father they needed. He entered Sarah's room, where the kids were gathered around, playing a game on their phones. Sarah smiled at him, and for the first time in weeks, Elon felt truly connected to the people who mattered most. How's everything going? She asked, her voice still weak but warm. Elon sat down beside her and took her hand. It's going well. I made a decision today, Sarah. I'm going to be here for the family, and I'm going to make this work with SpaceX. I'm not going to lose sight of what matters. She squeezed his hand gently, her tired eyes meeting his. You're making the right choice, Elon. I can see it. The kids need you, and you need them. He nodded, his throat tight. I know, and I'm going to prove it to them. As they sat together, Elon knew that the path ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be sacrifices, there would be difficult choices, and there would be moments where the pressure of both worlds threatened to overwhelm him. But for the first time, he felt ready to face those challenges, because he wasn't facing them alone. He had his family by his side, and that made all the difference. The sun was setting on the horizon, casting a golden glow across the city skyline visible from the hospital window. Elon sat quietly, watching the colors change across the sky, his thoughts a whirlwind of emotions. The past week had been a whirlwind itself. His decision to stay with his family in the face of SpaceX's biggest launch, the tension with the board, the long hours spent at the hospital, and the overwhelming sense of peace that came from finally being present for his children. He had made the choice to put them first, to be the father they deserved, and while it had not been easy, he knew he had made the right decision. It wasn't just about showing up when it was convenient. It was about being there for the small moments, the quiet moments that he had missed so many times in the past. And it was about trust, trusting his team at SpaceX to do their jobs without him hovering over them, trusting his family to understand the sacrifice, and trusting that the balance he sought was within his reach. But as the evening deepened, the reality of the situation set in once again. The board at SpaceX was still waiting for his return, still questioning his commitment. And though the mission was going well without him, the thought of how long he could hold onto both commitments, his family and his company, lingered in the back of his mind. Could he continue to stay present with his children while maintaining his role at the helm of a company as demanding as SpaceX? The question was no longer about his ability to succeed in both worlds. It was about how he could manage the strain of balancing them without losing either one. His phone buzzed again, a message from Marcus. The cooling system is holding well. The Mars mission is proceeding smoothly. The team is thrilled with the results. We're ready for the next phase. A sense of relief washed over him. Marcus and the team had handled everything with professionalism, just as he had hoped. SpaceX was in good hands. The Mars mission was still on track. Then came another message from Javier. Richard Norris has requested a meeting with you ASAP. He's very insistent about discussing the board's concerns. He still seems uneasy about your absence during the launch. Elon took a deep breath. He knew what this meeting would be about. The board's continued doubts about his commitment, the underlying tension from the top of the company that had never fully trusted his vision for balance. But Elon also knew something now that he hadn't fully grasped before. He didn't have to choose between his family and his work. The world and the people around him could adapt. He had proven that with the Mars mission, with SpaceX, and now with his children. He sent a quick reply to Javier. Tell Norris I'll be there in an hour. Let's clear this up once and for all. The boardroom was tense when Elon entered. All the familiar faces were there, including Richard Norris, who sat at the head of the table with his arms crossed, a look of frustration on his face. The rest of the board members seemed a mixture of impatient and skeptical. Elon took his seat at the head of the table, meeting their gazes with calm resolve. The room fell silent, and Norris was the first to speak. Elon, we've been patient with you, but this constant absence, it's becoming an issue. The board is concerned that your priorities are shifting too far from the company. We understand that family is important, but this is a critical time for SpaceX. We can't afford these distractions. Elon held up his hand, stopping him. Richard, I understand your concerns. I do, but let's be clear about something. SpaceX is more than just one person, no matter how important I am. It's a team. It always has been. And I've learned something over the past week. The team can handle it. I've been putting too much pressure on myself to solve everything, to be everywhere at once. I'm not going to do that anymore. There was a brief silence, and Norris opened his mouth to respond, but Elon continued. I've been building this company for years, working towards the dream of Mars, but I can't keep sacrificing my family. That's not a sustainable path. I've been telling myself that someday I'll balance it all, but someday never comes. I'm here to tell you that I'm going to balance it now. He paused, allowing the weight of his words to settle over the room. I'm not abandoning SpaceX. I'm not abandoning the mission, but I'm also not abandoning my children. They deserve better than the father who's always absent, always promising that next time will be different. They need me, Richard, and I'm not going to keep making the same mistakes. The room was silent for a moment before Dr. Elena Patel, a senior board member, spoke up. Elon, I understand what you're saying, but you've built something monumental here. The investors are already questioning your commitment, and we're approaching a critical phase with the Mars mission. What you're proposing, putting SpaceX on a lower priority, could have long-term consequences. Elon leaned forward, looking each of them in the eye. I'm not putting SpaceX on a lower priority. What I'm doing is setting a new standard. I trust my team, and I trust that they can handle things when I'm not there. I'm still the CEO, but I'm also a father, and the two can coexist. He sat back, waiting for their response. For the first time, he wasn't trying to win them over with his vision for Mars or for the company. He was speaking from the heart, from the place that mattered most. his family. The room was still tense, but as the minutes ticked by, something shifted. Dr. Patel spoke again. "I've seen how dedicated you are, Elon. You've given everything for this company, but I think we can all see that your heart is in the right place. Maybe there's a way to do both. To lead SpaceX and still be the father you want to be." Elon nodded, feeling a sense of relief he hadn't expected. "That's exactly it. We could do both. But it's going to take time. It's going to take trust. And it's going to take a new approach." Norris was the last to speak. "All right, Elon. We'll give you the space to find this balance. But you have to understand, there's no going back. This is a pivotal moment for both you and SpaceX." Elon smiled. "I understand, and I'm ready for it." As the meeting concluded, Elon felt a profound sense of accomplishment. The board had finally given him the space he needed. They had questioned him, but now they understood. He wasn't abandoning the mission, and he wasn't abandoning his family. He was simply choosing a path that honored both. When he walked out of the boardroom, he felt a sense of calm wash over him. It wasn't about compromise, it was about evolution. He had evolved, and now it was time for SpaceX to evolve too. That night, as Elon sat at home with his children, watching a movie and laughing together, he realized that the rocket to Mars was still soaring, but the most important journey was the one happening right there in his living room. He had found his balance, and that, more than anything, was the greatest success of all.